Hey everyone, welcome back to Koali Beach. This might seem a little bit strange because I'm hijacking this video from DeLadysigner, so just a quick disclaimer at the start here. Things have been kind of messy this week because while it was Lady's turn, her cat has been sick the entire week and she's been caring for the cat and doesn't have any time to run the channel on the side, and because of that we kind of have a bit of a time issue this week. And we're basically going with backup plan B, which is me putting together a quick video just working on some general stuff so that next week we can have the regular schedule return with Keralis and not miss out on a week of Koali Beach, and that's what we're going for. So, I'll be your host for this video. I am very sorry that I'm not the DeLadysigner and I am very bad at even trying to impersonate her, so I'm not even gonna try. But I'm gonna be doing some detailing around my area because I don't want to do anything that's like has a very large impact on the park as a whole, because I don't want to start just creating the entire park and not leaving anything up for them. So instead I'll just retreat to my little corner which I had over here and work on some very small detailing aspects that I needed to get in. And one of the very interesting things is, you've already seen the flat ride. I figured that would be a nice addition to the corner there, as there was quite a bit of open space and it kind of helps make the wooden coaster look a little bit bigger, since there is that nice framing and a little bit of forced perspective even in the future with having some small hills on the bottom of that. But also, there was a little bit of space left next to the station building. And here's something which I've been wanting to do for quite a while, and I've seen quite a few comments about this in the videos as well. It's a locker room, or at least a place with lockers where you can put your stuff in a theme park, which you very commonly see, especially around major areas or major rides. And it's something that we don't have in this park yet, but something that I definitely want to try and build. And it's a great way to fill in a bit of an area, since there wasn't really anything else that I wanted to fill this in with. There's already a lot of foodstuffs, so I'm not too worried about that. So it's a nice filler, but it also helps to make this entire area look a little bit more realistic. I feel this would be the kind of ride where in a park this size, kind of similar to Universal or Disney, I do want to have some kind of small locker area, even if it's not too big. Actually, no, this park is still mostly inspired by Busch Gardens, but I guess the same point still holds. It's an addition which I think is both nice in terms of realism and just a nice looking addition into an otherwise kind of dead corner of the park, because obviously I wanted to have a boulevard next to the lake, but of course you want to have something at the end of that boulevard. You don't want to just have a dead end that doesn't go anywhere and just looks good for no reason. So there's the ride, and there's the locker rooms over here as well, and it should hopefully be a pretty nice overall area to stay, and maybe I'll add some kind of stall to it, or at least have some way to make the waterfront also a nice place to stay and sit down on a bench and have some food or something. You know, just a relaxing kind of area. Also an area where you can actually look at the roller coaster, because personally, I think that's one of the most important things. I'm not a big fan of roller coasters that sort of hide away in the back and don't have any paths next to them. I think they can have their charms, but I just love it when a roller coaster is very open and when some of the greatest parts of the coaster are directly next to a path, and that even the people who don't want to ride it can still have a cool look at it, or even the people who do want to ride it can have an awesome look at it before they ride it. I'm just a really big fan of path interaction with coasters, as you might be able to tell, so in that sense, dragging out the path over here and at least giving it some kind of credibility to its existence just kind of feels like a nice way to neatly pack together the entire area here. And this does mean that I had to find some way to end the boulevard, because this park is named Koali Beach, and we better have a beach in this park, otherwise this is misleading marketing 101. So I already have a very small beach down at the area where Keralis built most of his Bora Bora huts, and where the entrance paths to the huts are as well. But I figured that's not really enough, and what I think would be really cool is to actually add more of a beach alongside the wooden coaster and kind of have the wooden coaster fly through the side of that and over some dunes, etc. We'll see in the very near future what that's gonna look like. Just testing some random ideas all the time over here. And honestly, a lot of the work is also general detailing, since I wanted to go quite in detail when it comes to all of the small parts of the park. And while it's definitely some of the things that I love about this game, just the fact that you can make your own lampposts and make your own planters and everything and copy them around and save them is so fantastic. But especially in a case like this where I want to make everything custom and I also want to have different variations within each area, it's very time consuming. Thankfully though, we can at least share blueprints around, so we can all use each other's blueprints, which has been going super awesome so far. And it's a great way to at least make everything a little bit more flexible and also a bit more cooperative, I suppose. But sometimes it can be very time consuming to put together all of the blueprints. Anyway, here I'm making the lockers, and this was one of my favorite parts. That just yeah, some of these lockers that you have to buy the key for, and you know how it goes. Basically, they're lockers, you put your stuff in them, and that pretty much means that your stuff is more or less safe. There's not too many actually. They're quite a bit larger than I was hoping them to be. Like somewhere around 4 or 5 lockers seems about the right height. Maybe even a little bit more when you compare it to the height of a regular person. But since the blocks, the generic primitive building form blocks are a little bit larger than the lockers that I was looking for, there aren't actually too many lockers on this thing. So we better spread these things throughout the park, because this is not gonna do. But anyway, yeah, this is just filling in that wall and adding some small detailing around it to finish it off. And that's pretty much the simple building here. It's a very simple building, and it's very similar to the buildings that I've already built, so I'm trying to add some variations to the theme, literally and figuratively, as much as I can, with having the offset roof on the back of the building and having the roof sticking out on the front here with the nice sign underneath it. Reading lockers, for anybody who has poor eyesight, I guess, or doesn't know what a locker is. I guess I could actually replace that sign. That's pretty damn obvious. Oh well, it's good to have a sign anyway. Now for a little bit more theming, I wanted to make the queue line for this ride a little bit more interesting as well. I don't think it really needs too much, because the queue is already purposely wrapping around the ride so that while you're standing in the queue and being very nervous, you can see everybody go upside down and go crazy for a couple of rounds before you can actually enter yourself. So that kind of interaction is always interesting with a queue and a ride, because queues are, I mean, I've said this before, but I'll just say it again, they're some of the most important parts of a park, in a sense that most people are gonna spend most of their time inside of a queue, so you better make it worth it. And this can be with scenery and making sure that the area around the queue is as nice as possible, but having as much interaction with the coasters or the rides that you're standing in the queue line for can always be a great thing as well. And even the most generic queues can benefit just from being very close to the ride that they are a queue for. In this case though, I didn't really want to go too overboard with making the queue and just put a quick roof over it, which I guess is gonna be nice in the rain, but it more or less just adds a bit of theming to the area. And then after that, I wanted to make a couple of small hills underneath the coaster and add in some rock work for detailing. And in a sense, it's a little bit forced perspective-ish, though take that with a grain of salt, because it's more or less just about the idea of what this area looks like as you're approaching it. Because these very small hills are kind of like sandy dune hills that make it seem as though the coaster is standing on top of them behind the flat ride, which hopefully should all visually stack up to give you this idea of the flat ride being a little bit low, even if it's a very large flat ride. And then on top of the hills behind that, and towering high above the flat ride, having the very menacing looking roller coaster, which just kind of looks bigger than everything else, because everything around the roller coaster drop is just quite small. Like, I'm just putting extra small trees around the drop here, and of course the locker building is also quite small. So yeah, the way that this entire area is set up should hopefully make the roller coaster look a bit more menacing, because it's not too ridiculous in terms of height. It's a very standard height, actually. So that's definitely not where it's getting most of its thrills from. I guess I do like the way that it's curving, though. I'm still not sure if I should call it a gravity group coaster or a GCI coaster, since the first part of the coaster is very GCI-ish. And so is the last part, actually, especially with having the transfer track flyby. But then some parts are very hilly and very straight, in a sense that it's more gravity group-ish. And besides, it doesn't have the trains of either of them, so it's just a wooden roller coaster. The reason that I'm fussing about these companies so much is just because I'm me, and I like that kind of aspect in parks. I'm just not sure what I would categorize this as, because there's a vast amount of different wooden roller coasters out there, and they all have very minor differences that you might not notice when you're not as into the companies, but when you are, it can be a pretty stark annoyance when it doesn't exactly line up to what the typical coasters of the company are. So for instance, GCI, which most of this coaster is inspired by, is a company which usually features curved drops, has barely any straight sections whatsoever, rarely ever has very large hills. It's all very close to the ground, very quick, twists and turns everywhere. And Gravity Group, especially some of the recent ones, are quite similar to that, I feel, but they are, they do feature some large hills as well, and are sometimes more spread out. There's a very subtle difference in it that's very hard to describe, really. And then there's some of the older wooden roller coasters that are just out and back with simple hills. There's hybrid wooden roller coasters which are completely different, and there's so much different stuff out there. I'm not going to go into the details too much though, because that would seem a bit too nerdy, but that's basically why I care about this coaster so much, because even though it's one of my favorite layouts, it's one that feels a bit like it's in the uncanny valley as to what manufacturer would realistically make it if this were a real park. I'm kind of lagging behind because of that tangent though, because I'm heading into the final part of the time-lapse, and this is a very, very brief part after just generally sketching out the area around the wooden roller coaster. And by that I really mean generally sketching out, it's just a general idea of what it's going to look like, not the final detailing whatsoever. But after doing that, I figured I would give Keralis Loch Flume a small visit, because there were some parts that were still somewhat unfinished, and I figured I could just butt in and put some stuff here and there. I hope he doesn't mind. Keralis, if you're watching this, please, I have the best of intentions here. I just had some time left to fill in this episode, and I figured if I'm not going to start anything new, just let you guys do whatever with the layouts and make sure that it all fits in the end. I might as well just go back and backtrack for a little bit and add a bit more detailing without really changing anything to the areas that we have so far. So a lot of this is just adding a bit more extra rocks, small shrubbery, all that good stuff. It's always quite fun to place these things, even if it's a very kind of simple, almost therapeutic kind of thing to do. Just put on some good music and place some ground shrubbery, and you can have almost like, I don't know, a meditation session on video games. Maybe that's pushing it a little bit. I do love doing this though. I've actually been listening a lot to kind of tropical music, especially while doing this as well. I've listened a lot to London Calling by The Clash, just because it kind of fits the reggae atmosphere. And the same goes for the Sandinista album. So serious shout outs to The Clash for allowing lots of Koali Beach time lapses. But yeah, that aside, we're almost done with this episode. I want to thank you guys for staying through my enormous tangents and my stream of consciousness for now. I'm sorry about the rest not being available right now, and I'm generally sorry on my behalf as well for how it's gone this week. It's just, we can't do anything about it, and what happened with the lady's cat is very unfortunate and very sudden and very surprising as well. So this is just about the best that we can do for now. I hope you guys don't mind too much, and hopefully we'll be back with the regular schedule next week. So I'll see you guys then.